A lot of the practices I do, because I get a lot of people coming to me every day, just to help deal with the lust and envy and anger, and in whatever situation. And a lot of the times, all that I guide them to, when we think as people, the incredible opportunities we have, first of all, to find this place of tranquility and peace, whatever it is within us, to allow lust and anger and envy and all that to arise quite safely. So I always go people back to, somewhere in childhood, teenager, adult, we felt safe and nurtured. And that could be in your mum's arms or out in nature, or might be in later years when you just kind of were in a good space. And you said, I remember one friend, a CEO of a, major health company, and he said, there was a time in my life when everything went right. I was just about to graduate and the whole world was at my feet, and I said, well, what happens when you feel into that? And he said, well, I feel like a superhero.
Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Chicho, and today I'm joined by Stephen Altair. Let me tell you about this incredible guy and what he's been up to. Stephen first of all, he's co-founded 3 different educational institutions. He's co-founded a health and lifestyle television channel. He's spoken and given workshops around the world, including at a Microsoft convention on the subject of mindfulness practices and technology. We definitely could use more of those talks. He's an author. He's published almost a dozen books. He's a music composer. He's a mystic, and he's an expert in Vedic astrology. He's been teaching meditation techniques for over 30 years now, and he has an ongoing class that I'm going to tell you about this class, but it teaches soul insights of ancient Egypt astrology with mind training, alchemy, psychoanalytic techniques of shamanic practices, and alchemical awareness training. And it combines ancient wisdom with modern psychology, flow techniques, and neurolinguistic programming. So, if you are an avid listener of my podcast, I'm sure that already you have had your whistle wet. Because that just sounds amazing. Thank you so much for beaming in, Stephen. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too, Faust. It's a great honor, and to everybody listening, thank you. Really, I always think this is very much a collective conversation. So hopefully you'll feel like you're having a dialogue with me as well. So I really want to speak to the amazing hearts of each of you that is bringing love and care and peace to this planet. So I'm
absolutely
aware that's our audience.
Those are the ears we'll have, I'm sure. And I'm sure of it. Tell everyone where you are, first of all.
Yeah. So I live in Japan. I'm out actually in a very isolated country area in Japan, right beside an ancient forest and an old, a Zen temple that was built in 774. So it's old.
Wow.
And it was also, it used to house lodgings for 14 monks and 14 nuns until a samurai battle destroyed it.
Seriously?
So, Yep. That's the. We've got lots of samurai and lots of Zen temples around us. So so when I go there, there's a seat I sit on that's been sat on for over 1,000 years, which is it feels very incredibly rich. There's a whole amazing sense of history in the area, and if I look out my window this way, there's a temple to Green Tara. Out that way is a temple to Guanyin.
Wow.
Out that way is a temple to Saraswati. And this way, out my left, is to the Dragon King's daughter and the dragon itself. So that I actually live in, by traditions, what was known as the Dragon of Inbar. So this dragon apparently flew over the area, fell to earth. And so they've got a temple where the head landed and a temple where the tail landed, and there's this big swamp and where the belly is supposed to be. So it's really very rich. And our bridges have got dragons with pearls, on them. So that'll give you a feeling of feeling of how to. I was describing this the other day to somebody, and she said, "I want to come. I want to visit Japan," because I was asking it, "What's outside your window, and what about this way?" To learn. I mean, just to people who are listening, this is something you can really do, right? We sometimes don't feel into our community and feel into the richness of things that you mightn't have discovered that lie to the north or the south or the east and the west, and learn a little bit about the richness of the soul of the area. So I'm a Maori, Hawaiian, Jamaican by origin, and so for the Maori, right, every river is an entity, and in fact, New Zealand now has given the legal rights to rivers and mountains, which I just love. I think every part of the world, the rivers have a right. If you want to draw your power from the rivers, then for goodness sake, treat them sacredly, or you'll end up with lots of drought.
Absolutely. They say location, location, location. My God, you definitely have, you've got that locked down. That sounds amazing and incredible. It's it's a really good point. You can really kind of stop and kind of put your senses out and feel into what's in your immediate community and kind of go from there. It's such a thing that most people don't do. We kind of take it for granted, we're so busy. But it's it's a great reminder to do that. So how did you end up in Japan, my friend?
I've got to blame my wife for that. So we met in New Zealand, and we stayed there for a year, and she enjoyed it, but she missed, as she says, three things: her mum, her friends, and Japanese food. And so I have to. Her mum's a very dear soul. Her friends are lovely, and Japanese food is magic, especially for those of you who have any kind of allergies. There's especially if you have wheat allergies, Japan's a real, it's a godsend for that, because of course this is a rice growing country. So right. I found both my sister and I had a gluten allergy. So coming to Japan, well, in fact, both of us lived in Japan. She lived in Japan a number of years ago, and she said she suddenly shifted to rice eating, and her whole
I'm sure
changed. Yeah,
they don't allow the glyphosate in Japan, do they?
Correct. Yeah,
that's what I thought. Yeah, they're like, no, this is an antibiotic. Why would we spray this on her? And they're like, no, everyone's doing it here. Yeah, and Japan was like, no, it's an antibiotic. We know what'll happen if we start spraying it on everything. Yeah, there's only a few countries that did that. And Japan, if I memory serves me, was one of them. So that in and of itself, my God, what a difference on the entire food supply that exactly. Have. Yeah, I'm
very present there because all my relatives are either market garden. They'll one of them owns a rice farm. One of them is market gardener. They're all, earth people, and all our area has from where my house is. It goes to forests and then into market gardens and then into forests and then into more. So there's a lot of farming out here. All done. It's very organic. Yeah, all the farmers I've talked to are very, very, caring. And it's really like you can imagine in Japan, all the plots are very, very tidy.
Right.
And what the farmers do is they rent out their entire fields to all the local community, so to help them. So each person has kind of, if they don't have their own garden, we're lucky. We've got a lovely garden area here. But if you don't, they've got, because there's a lot of smaller apartments here.
Right.
They've got plots that they rent off the farmer for a pittance, really, but it allows them to grow food. So they were about the time of I was here over the 2011, that big disaster in Japan. That I actually stood on a basketball court and watched the earth come to me and lift me up. I was there with a professional basketball player, friend of mine. I was lifted into the air with him. We both looked at each other. I said to him, well, look, if this is the time, I said, right. I couldn't go out with a better guy. It was pretty scary. And then there were in Tokyo, there were buildings that burst into fire because the electrical generators or some other thing caught fire. Yeah. So that, that power of the earth is very present in Japan.
It's God, it's such a, it seems like such, I just saw that there was that terrible event that happened with the former prime minister, and of course, that's got a lot of people talking here about the fact that the way it was done and is very reminiscent to a lot of some of the more high profile things that go on in this country. So, but for the most part, Japan just keeps a very kind of low profile, and they do their own thing it's what seems to be a very harmonious way for the people. I'm not saying it's heaven on earth, but it seems to me like there's a lot more, the government acts more in accordance to the ideals that America was founded on and supposed to be acting on, but really doesn't anymore. Japan seems to have held more of that, intact over the years since World War II ended than we have, which is amazing. It's kept its culture, but it's, I think, adopted some of the finer parts of what was supposed to make America the ideal country to live in. So you correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the impression I get.
Yeah, no. I actually had during the middle of the pandemic, I met, a whole group of wonderful parents and kids in the middle of Tokyo, in the middle of the park with tons of people there. And we were talking about exactly that. And I was saying, one thing I've got a lot of friends who are vaccinated, and I've got a lot of friends who are unvaccinated. And I really love the feeling that we can make our own choice, whatever that is. And in Japan, they allowed people to do that, which meant if you get the vaccination, and that was really apparent in our area, because I'd ask people and they'd say, no, I haven't got it. Yes, I have. And there was a very gentle kind of appreciation of whatever view you took. So when we met in this park, that's what I asked one of the people, saying at that point, the numbers were quite low. And people said, I said, what do you make of all that? There's a lot of people in Tokyo. And he just said, I think Japanese are very compassionate as a group towards each other. We're definitely very tolerant. We don't want the government to make decisions for us, or so wise. There's just a implication of like, okay, if you want to get it, we advise it or we don't, but that was it. Whereas I've got a lot of really great friends in Australia and New Zealand who are doctors and nurses who don't support what's mandates, and yet they've got mandates there, and they've lost their jobs. And they've been fired. I know this because I'm advising quite a number of them, and I just my heart really goes out to anybody out there who's forced to make a decision against your will. That just simply is not, like you said about in America. That's what when I feel into the soul America, freedom is at the heart of, and liberty, right, is at the heart of every true person in America. That's what Americans love. I love America for that whole point of view. It's kind of really amazing opportunity. That's if you can live it practically. And of course, you're going to get challenged, but you want to be open to other people's opinions in a very kind. I love the Dalai Lama's view, right? The philosophy we need around the planet is just kindness to each and every person in every possible way.
Agreed. Absolutely. And I look around now, and I'm, whenever there's an emotional, kind of, when things get into a bit of a frenzy, no matter what the emotion is, whether it's lust, whether it's fear, that is like a storm. This, it comes on, it's strong, and then it subsides. But when a storm is happening, it's hard to hear or focus on anything else. But as that storm kind of subsides and the sea starts to settle, then you can kind of start to take stock of, whoa, like, is everyone okay? So I feel like that's happening a little bit in America right now, but I also know that, there's so much politicking in this country and so much propaganda that relies on the outrage media, and that they thrive on it. And so they've come to need it. They don't know how to operate without it anymore. So, I know that it's probably a matter of time before another storm rolls in. Not that it will be a real storm, but I'm enjoying this time where there is the semblance of peace between people who, for almost 2 years felt like they couldn't be exposed to that person, whether that be because they were given the jab or not, whether that be because they didn't believe as they did, and suddenly they found that their beliefs would somehow endanger them. You know what I mean? We were living in a society that found other people's beliefs dangerous. Hello. That's how the Crusades started. Okay. Well,
I had the same thought as you. Exactly.
I mean, and then to think about it now, it's like, oh my God, like, yeah, you know, I mean, I hope people are stopping and taking a deep breath and realizing that, okay, maybe I should call Aunt Judy and see how she's doing. I know I told her I'd never speak to her again, but
yep.
maybe I acted in haste. I don't know. I'm hoping that's happening. I can cross my fingers.
Well, just, those exact cases. I know exact cases of friends who have gotten Aunt Judy that they said they're not going to speak to because Aunt Judy suddenly said to them they disagreed with whatever their belief was around whatever decision they made. Right. I'm totally with you. It's, a lot of the practices I do, because I get a lot of people coming to me every day, just to help deal with the lust and envy and anger, and in whatever situation. And a lot of the times, all that I guide them to, when we think as people, the incredible opportunities we have, first of all, to find this place of tranquility and peace, whatever it is within us, to allow lust and anger and envy and all that to arise quite safely. So I always go people back to, somewhere in childhood, teenager, adult, we felt safe and nurtured. And that could be in your mum's arms or out in nature, or might be in later years when you just kind of were in a good space. And you said, I remember one friend, a CEO of a major health company, and he said, there was a time in my life when everything went right. I was just about to graduate and the whole world was at my feet, and I said, well, what happens when you feel into that? And he said, well, I feel like a superhero. So we actually then went, so then from that guidance of resting in that stable, peace, tranquility, or superhero status, we then go and I ask people to then, whatever the lust, anger, envy, problems, challenges they've got, to actually solve those problems gently, one by one, bringing, kindness and either superhero feeling or peace and tranquility to it. And it's quite amazing what happens because we quite often, when we're in anger, we solve our problems from anger. And that then the outcome, of course, is quite often more anger, because you can't see all the frustrations you bring to really sometimes quite simple situations. But if you can rest back with somebody for a while, it's a little bit like being held. I always put it like being held by your mum. Because when people ask, what do? I say, oh, look, I'm a forest Yoda who embodies Divine Mother. And they go, oh, that always kind of perks people up. They think, what on earth does that mean? I said, well, and then I give them the example. What if you're resting back in, your mum's arms, or because quite often, there might be some feelings with people where they're not attuned to their mother because their mother mightn't have cared. So there's going to be somebody, an aunt, a grandfather or grandmother. There'll be somebody who represents the mother principle. And when you actually remember those, so I remember this lovely soul said to me, I used to just sit on my grandpa's lap, because she didn't have that connection with her mum. And he'd read this, book, beautiful, like the Dr. Seuss books. And I'd just look at the ceiling, and it was like the ceiling was covered in stars. And I just feel so beautiful. And then she could keep, so I just keep bringing her. So she had a job problem. I'd bring her back to that. And we'd look at her job from her grandpa's knee. And then so you get the idea. Yeah.
It's beautiful. It reminds me of when I was very troubled that many years ago, and I was meeting with this mentor and this angel of a woman who, she actually named my podcast. I talk about her quite often. She changed my life in so many ways. She's no longer here on this plane, so I talk about her in past tense. I don't know why, but I guess I just out of habit. But she used to always have me, it was when I first had children, so it was about 10 years ago, and she would have me come in, and I would be wound up, and I would be filled with self-loathing, but I had this new experience of being a father, and of course that changes you on a cellular level, it did for me. And she would have me kind of just stop, with the external distractions and touch into, and she would make me talk about my babies, and of course that would change everything. And she'd be like, I want you to do this when you find yourself in that state. She's like, just touch and talk to yourself about your children, because it changes everything about your energy and your mood, everything that you're doing. So I kind of got into that practice. And then of course, the more you practice being in that state, the more you find yourself in that state, and then all of a sudden I don't even need to think about my babies to be in a state of gratitude. So it's like, it's such a great practice.
Oh, that's brilliant. Actually, you brought to mind something that I've always felt about war. I always think we fight wars in an incorrect manner, and that if every single, so take Ukraine and Russia, if every single Ukrainian soldier and every single Russian soldier were to take their mum and their sister and their babies, or any sensitive, vulnerable aspect of their life like that, and go onto the field and then try to have a fight alongside your mum and your sister with your holding your babies in the hand. I mean, you would stop war, because there's that gentle, what you're talking about.
Yeah,
it changes everything. The mere fact that you're no longer facing the enemy, but you're actually facing, hopefully, potentially, why you might do anything in life, and that is to care for your immediate family and your friends. And
that's right.
You would stop. There would be a ceasing, because we would actually recognize what we're doing anything for, and it's not the reasons that the politicians and warmongers say. It's nothing to do with that.
Nothing to do with that at all.
Yeah,
that's a sociopathic kind of, failed matrix that has somehow found itself in charge of way too much, and God willing, this shift that's happening is going to bring balance to that. The age of information has come, and now, I like to think, obviously we're entering into the golden age, astrologically speaking, but also this is the age of transparency. I was just listening to John F. Kennedy give a speech last night, one of the famous speeches he gave, and he talked about, you can't have a society where you expect there to be trust and not have transparency. And governments have become shrouded in just, it's the opposite of transparency. And then they persecute people who demand that transparency. It's like, wait a minute, if we did what you guys did, you would throw us in prison. Isn't that a double standard? You know what I mean? We can't just do that. We can't just have a debt like that and all this stuff. It's just crazy that no one stops and thinks about it.
Yeah.
But they're starting to. Anyway, let's talk.
Yeah, I love that. Speaking to trust, trust, love, wisdom. That's my arc.
I love that.
It's real easy. Like you say, you've got to really build trust. Yeah, the whole key for our planet at the moment is to get before or including love. We need that trust and transparency you're talking about. I so agree.
Right. And it goes right back to what you were saying. It is about safety. People who are in fear are not, and who have been, led astray and lied to so many times, are not going to be, just forthcoming with their trust. It has to be earned. But if people trusted it, if they could trust, if we lived in a society that if we had leaders that were in the position that they are now, and we know they had our best intentions at heart, because they've shown us time and time again that they do, that they'll own up to their mistakes. They'll apologize when they make them, because we're all human and we all understand mistakes. We can all forgive, but this incessant, willingness to just try and deny and, and going down that road is that doesn't help anyone. And the people who follow you down that road are just as astray as, the person leading, because it's built on lies. So, yeah, well, I think things are shifting.
Me too. Me too. I'm with you on the golden age.
Yeah.
Actually, and connecting to that golden age, and it was your aunt, right, who kept guiding you back to talking about your babies. Was it?
Oh,
Right?
well, she was a friend. She was a mentor. She was helping me, and in that setting 10 years ago was of a therapeutic setting that she was helping me in. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so one thing that I was going to just mention on that in the golden age, like, one of the things we're really present to on our planet is family, right? I mean, family in whatever form is really important to us. And so if you consider, as you're listening to me now, consider who you think your family is. Now, for some people, it might not be your immediate family, because you might have issues. There might have been challenges with your own immediate family. So you might have kind of gathered this family around you, that's got friends that have become your family.
Sure.
Or even you might feel quite isolated. You might feel, I get a lot of people coming to me who feel extremely lonely. And so I was in a retreat setting with a wonderful Rinpoche known as Sotni Rinpoche, and he said, and this is almost the same philosophy I go to every day. We often perceive that our only family is this physical family, and yet there is, as he said, there are billions and billions of celestial beings, guides, mentors, guardians, all the aspects of higher frequency, other dimensions, other astral planes, other planets, other solar systems, within the cosmos that we are not tuned into, simply because maybe we've just had our head down and we're on social media all day, or our job, devours our attention. So we actually don't give much time to anything else. And it's a little bit like considering whatever you bring your attention to, well, there it is. That's what's going to consistently manifest in your awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was very young, when I was 0, when I was born, I was trained by my godmother was a Carmelite Mother Superior, and she trained me in the what's known as the centering prayer, which is derived from a well-known mystical alchemist text, or Christian mystical text, known as the Cloud of Unknowing. And basically what it says is that in order to really know God, or whatever you want to call that aspect of everything, that all it is, or source, or universal energy and consciousness, that in order to know that, if our ego can just let go of where all we define it as, or our religions define it as, and actually just say, oh, well, actually, we don't know, and surrender to that unknowing, then all sorts of other real deep awareness can come, because you actually start to touch the unknowing, which is vast. So when I was very little, at those early ages, because my godmother was training me, I saw angels from a very from right when I was little, and I never considered that other people couldn't see them, and it didn't matter. So I immediately thought, oh, they're part of my family. So any of you that are listening, that you might feel lonely, if you start to really trust, and this is what you were speaking to about trust and transparency, that if you really speak to trusting your own soul nature, and your soul nature is revealing whatever, angels, guardians, mentors, Buddhas, celestial beings, elders, bodhisattvas, in whatever tradition you come from, then this speaks to the heart of your family, that your family doesn't just include your physical family, but includes, like Sotni Rinpoche said, the opportunity to access billions and billions of celestial beings who are actually present for you. And if your awareness is just tuned to the television and feeling all the suffering that goes on our planet, and the droughts and the wars and the pandemics, then that's actually what's going to keep generating in your consciousness.
That's right.
But if you spend even a little time every day in the unknowing, or in the opportunity to be present with the vastness and the boundless opportunity of awareness itself, then real miracles arise within your own being, because that's basically who you are. You are ultimately the cosmos, and the cosmos is flowing through you, and you're not separate from it. You're not the body. and you're not your thoughts. you're not
That's
all
right.
these things that you generate, because they're all conditioned. And so it's really, it's really beautiful to
It is
consider
so beautiful,
how,
what you just said. And it's, it's, we get trapped in our five senses. We have this amazing, technology, this body, and it's so awesome, but it's ours. And that's one of the reasons why we came, but we get lost in it. We get trapped by it almost, because we all of a sudden we limit ourselves to it. But there is, very much a sixth sense that we all have. And I know that that's become, a cliched way of describing, our ability to connect to things other than what's in our five senses. But it is very vital that you understand that is the key, to this connection that Stephen's talking about. And this is the greatest gift you can give yourself, truly. Especially with the more turmoil that we see in the world, the more we're being called to shut it all off, except, empty this and allow this touch, just contact to happen. Because if you allow it to become still and empty and allow this nothing to, this unknown space to come in, I promise you, not only is it going to be one of the most remarkable feelings that you have, because you're not going to be consumed with anything, but literally anything. But then you have made space for the divine, for the universe, for the angels, your celestial family, which is vast, to come in and comfort you and speak to you and give you what maybe you've been looking for or longing for a long time. So I think that what Stephen is talking about is just so important and so vital that we share with everyone listening. So I love the way you phrased it.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, obviously you're experiencing the same thing. And, to all of you that are listening, so, what we're both sharing about is that sixth sense. Because again, people will often ask, oh, how do I do it? How do I do it? Well, ultimately you are it, right? You're not separate from a sixth sense. I mean, you're not separate from any of your senses. It's just that we tend to focus on the other five senses. So one of the simple ways you can do it, and I often guide people, is spend some time in your heart, resting back as this knowing. Now, in simple terms, just to explain something that happens, most of us, even when we start to talk about the sixth sense, we tend to conceptualize it, right? We're here because we're so used to operating in our world. People ask us, who are you? What are you? What do you do? Everything's beamed in and out through here. So the opportunity just to, exactly as Faust was saying, to rest in the unknown, to rest in that empty, vast nothingness, and actually allow what those opportunities to arise is a very heart-based connection.
Yes.
In other words, you're dropping out of conceptual awareness and you're starting to drop into non-conceptual or non-dual or limitless awareness. And the opportunity to do that, I mean, it's quite obvious, right? In one sense, if we're talking about conceptual awareness, it's going to be bound by whatever our current concepts are. But and if you drop that and just allow yourself to drop down in the heart, and sometimes just even feeling it, putting your hand on your heart, closing your eyes, resting back, tuning into a space, maybe like nature, where you felt really, really at peace. Mm-hmm. And then allowing thoughts to arise. So this is how you can access that unknowing or emptiness. When thoughts arise, simply allow them to arise unobstructed. Don't try to force them. Don't grab onto them. So you might have and the easiest way I always describe for people to do this is when you're resting in your heart and you've got your hand on your heart and you're just knowing whatever arises, allow a simple neutral thought, like what you had for breakfast or lunch, right? And you allow that to come up and you actually see that arise. a sense of loving kindness. You just allow it to arise with no attachment to it, because there's no real attachment to our breakfast or lunch. And you'll be aware as you do that it arises and it abides in your consciousness for a little while, and then it will vanish. No matter how much you try to hang on to your bowl of whatever you have to have for breakfast or your coffee, it'll dissolve. And at the point of that dissolution, there's a little gap where suddenly another thought will arise. So going to the gap is really actually that space. Being aware of that, and then another thought is actually really useful, because you'll find as you rest in the heart and you're knowing and just being open to whatever arises, things start to slow down. Even listening to me, you might sort of start to feel like, oh, I'm resting in my heart. Breath is quite a good one. Breath awareness. You're just aware of the breathing all the way in the inhalation, and then you're aware, oh, there's a little pause there. And then all the way on the exhalation, and there's another little pause. So you start to become intimately aware with the breath. And then when you let a thought of your breakfast arise, you start to become intimately aware of the nature of your thoughts. And the same feelings. If you've got anger or frustration about something at the moment, you could let that arise really gently. Don't make it the biggest frustration you've got. Just say if you've got something not going too well with somebody at work, or maybe you had a bit of an argument with your partner, or just a friend you didn't see eye to eye. So you can bring that up and you can feel into that energy with that person, and you can just allow it. So it's the key, really what Faust was pointing to is this open allowing and this emptiness. Is you start to be able to embrace anything that arises. Everything that arises within that emptiness and unknowing. In other words, you're actually not grabbing onto your thought of your, dispute with your friend at work, but you're actually allowing it to arise without any conditions, just kind of learning about it, just developing a relationship of kindness to the energies within your being. That it starts to develop into a very deep knowing. And that knowing is what allows you to then access also what lies outside, though, because you start to really develop a deep intuitive relationship with the space in your thoughts and feelings that you might not even have really been aware of before. I always love that phrase by Deepak Chopra where he said, we have 60,000 thoughts a day and 40,000 of them we had yesterday. And I'm especially grateful to him. I work on an advisory team with Deepak.
Oh, cool.
A group called Heal.art. So we, all of us have exchanged lots of beautiful connections over the period that we've been working with Heal.art. And he's a very gentle soul with some really, really good wisdom.
Seems very gentle. Yeah.
So just speaking to that knowing and unknowing, it's really, you start to become aware that you don't even really know your breath that well, and you don't even know your thoughts or feelings that well. So this is an opportunity when you rest back in that knowing in the heart and you allow just the breakfast to arise. Do it with an easy thing first, and then do it with a positive thing that's happened for you, and allow that positive feeling to, and then do it with something that is a bit challenging, and see if that emptiness and vastness of your being can embrace all of that, just in exactly the same way. And that helps you to helps to develop equanimity and tranquility.
And don't get frustrated trying to do it right, or trying to judge whether you're doing it right. That's a trap, and that's your ego anyway. Get lost in the process and detach from any expectations about how it's gonna go or supposed to go, and then you can find a little bit of joy in it, and you can kind of, I like to put my scientist hat on, and when I observe, when I bring myself, when I shift my perspective to observe my emotions, which is a really great trick to have these days and to practice and get good at, because then you can really start to put space between your thoughts and specifically some of your actions or reactions, and man, that pays dividends, because you're going to be able to see how your immediate response would be, see the emotion, and then, actually gain perspective on it and start to let it, because it's an emotion. It's literally energy in motion. It's going to move, especially if you're allowing it to move, right? But we like to steel grip our emotions and hold our breath, and it's like we're afraid they might never come back sometimes, I think. But it's a wonderful practice to get into. I think it's saved me and changed my life since I found it many, many years ago. And because this world will have you in a reactionary state. I mean, this world is built, like right now, a society, particularly in America, it's built to keep you in a reaction, whether it's, you're on your phone or you're looking at, different things, but everything is fast and very gratifying. And if you're not conscious, you will be a literal walking reaction from one headline to the next. So it's just wonderful. Yeah.
I love that. And I love your scientist hat. Just speaking to that for a moment, one of the things that I see a lot of scientists, particularly scientists, psychiatrists, and doctors these days. And part of the reason is that some years ago, some scientists asked me, well, yeah, okay, so, you do this emptiness practice and you can, but does it really do any good? So they actually did experiments on me over it. So I had neuroscientists in the US and in Japan. And last August, one of the Japanese companies, Dentsu Science Jam, which is one of the largest media companies in Japan, they published some results from myself and the control group of a group of meditators, three groups of meditators in Japan. And what they did is they looked at exactly what you and I are speaking about. They looked at what happens when you've got an object-based awareness, when you're living in reaction or living, and then they looked at what happened when you dropped out of that, when you were in that total emptiness and that opportunity, as you said, not trying to get it right, just simply being present to whatever arises. So I did this. I'll just share again. So they published this as part of a technology and science conference in Japan, actually a science and engineering conference. And what they looked at, and you'll see, speaking to the emptiness. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
The graph? Okay. So the green one is me, and the gray, the orange, and the blue is data from 3 separate meditation groups. So what the scientists wanted to see was whether I could shift dramatically from a very high focus state, which they said would probably be the closest for me to some kind of focusing just on an object rather than objectlessness. These were 60-second grabs that they took of myself. And then in the middle part where there's that little kink in the middle, that was just a neutral state where there's no, just sitting. And then this part was the part that amazed them, because you can see it goes deeply down into the negative frontiers. And this was the part where the instruments couldn't measure that. They said, actually, that green line goes way below that, but they said you should technically be dead, because whatever you were able to do in those 60 seconds, and in fact, the 60-second practice I did to do this was a practice I taught to the president of Focuscom, which is a headset company that deals with Olympic swimming, American Olympic swimming team and weightlifters and so on. And that is Tibetan sky practice, where you just simply, you can do it outside. So if you're listening to me, you can do it outside. And you basically shout at the sky.
Oh,
hey,
really?
Shout. I've taught this to my daughter from when she was very little, that anytime she got really frustrated, go out and shout the frustration.
Sure.
It's really great, right? We don't let out enough. and the sky will grab it because the sky's vast. So that was what, you do it, you can do it out. I did that in Tibet because I spent time in Nepal and India, Tibet. And when, so I've got a very vivid visual memory of actually doing that. And so what I did for this particular moment where it goes deep down into not registering on the instruments was just in my inner mind, I would just sit and then just yell within my mind silently at the sky. So I'm visualizing the sky, shouting at and it immediately takes me into that vast emptiness, and my consciousness that's focused drops away completely. Wow. And they just said, how did you do that? And how did you do that within 60 seconds? So it was a very, it was a lovely blessing. And they were able to then, share that at a major engineering and science conference, which brought a lot of, interesting comments, and brought a lot of scientists to my door asking me, you'll laugh at this too, they're asking me for a pee sample because they discover, I mean, this is the other funny little bit that always the evidence is good for people, right?
Right, because of course, yes.
Say, well, if does he actually really do what he says he does? And then I show them these actual graphs, and they go, oh, okay, I get it. So neuroscientists looked at my graph. They've been doing some studies on DMT. So those of you
that's a hot topic. I love that topic. Yeah,
me too. So those of you that have kind of got connections with DMT in any way, he did this. Can you see that graph of the DMT?
Yes.
Okay, so
look at that.
Here's your baseline here. And when you're on DMT, you basically puts you into a very high theta state. So there's a high theta spike, about 7.8. It's about what's known as the Schumann resonance in theta terms, because it roughly oscillates. Schumann roughly oscillates around 7.8 hertz for theta and about 14 hertz for alpha. So then he said, he took these readings over a long time, and he said, oh, Stephen, he said, you've got this theta spike, so you can see it here in my graph, that goes way up and is sitting on 7.8 hertz the whole time, like you're on DMT. He said, and my brain's like that. Everything's very bright. I see beings, I can see people's aura. I mean, there's all that natural kind of stuff that arises for people, just simply because, as you mentioned, you rest back and flow into the unknown. So that was quite a really cool comparison that he made. I did love it. So there's lots of journeys we can take.
So many journeys, and the mind is you're what you don't know is you're tailor built for it. You're already your whole design is so grand and literally divine that you're missing no components of anything that you need to experience what we're talking about. And it doesn't matter how much, experience you've had thus far, I meditate and nothing happens. Well, you know what I mean? Like, so if you're meditating and waiting for something to happen, there's your problem right there. But my point in saying this is, there's you learn about this as you start to study DMT and how it ends up in the mind and kind of where it parks, because its parking spot in the brain is basically the same parking spot that serotonin and melatonin take, but it's kind of a souped up, it's whereas the parking spot is normally, has a Chevrolet in it in the form of a serotonin, molecule or neurotransmitter or whatever you want. It's all those things. Then now a Lamborghini is parked there, or you can pull in, with this Ferrari, which is like this bioluminescent molecule that parks there. It's the same molecule that they find in electric eels and those bioluminescent, fish that live in the deep ocean. And then there's one more that is basically, it's the same one they find in hibernating bears. It's the one that says everything is totally cool, man. You don't need food. You don't need sex. You got everything you could possibly need. And all of these, they all have a place, and your body can create all of them as is. You don't even need to seek them out. The chemistry is there already, is what I'm trying to say. So it's like, I know some of the things we're talking about may seem like, oh yeah, that'll happen to other people, but if you stay with this practice, and you're patient and you let go of your expectations, you're going to be surprised by what can happen to you as well. That's all I wanted to say about all that.
I love this conversation. You're right. All our biochemistry, everything is wired to do this. That is, and a lot of it, if you look at, say, for example, some of the ancient traditions, which say basically the view you want to have is this open emptiness to whatever arises. Whether you look at the Christian Cloud of Unknowing or whether you look at Tibetan Dzogchen, those are basically the same view. And then if you consider what to know then that you're indivisible from all of this, all these opportunities, because we get those feelings, right? There's little moments you have in your life where you think, I really feel connected to this tree, or I feel connected to my lover, or I feel connected to the entire cosmos. Yeah. There's moments where we get that feeling of indivisibility. So we know that inherently. Our baby's born, we get that feeling of,
I was just thinking of this baby I saw. You took it right out of my mind. I saw this beautiful baby. I took my son for his checkup. We found this awesome holistic doctor, and this woman was sitting there, and she had a 7-month-old baby boy, and he was just, I was like, it leaves me speechless when I see these beautiful little creatures. These
exactly. Yeah, same. I've got the same heart. I'm just absolutely speechless with babies. So, and in fact, that's a brilliant sign, right, of this knowing and sixth sense, is that speechlessness taps straight into that heartfelt openness, where the speechlessness is because you're not in conceptual mind. You're not
right.
Making a whole lot of judgments about, this is a beautiful baby, she's bigger than my baby, she's
no, you're out of there.
You're just speechless because there's absolute beauty in that moment. So that the first, the openness to the baby, if we take the baby. Second one is knowing at that moment you're indivisible from that. There's just that sense of real bonding. And the third part is then you start to develop through practice that deep sense of confidence, because it is mostly our confidence that in everyday life that stops us from actually connecting. It's just that simple confidence, because we just doubt ourselves, that self-doubt, or that feeling of lack of self-worth, I'm not worthy, or I just doubt my abilities. And just as you said, hey, we've got it. We've actually got the blueprint right within us. That's what's so exciting. If you just accept that one thing, that you're absolutely complete and perfect, just as you are, for all the things that you're made to do and need to unfold, that kind of beautiful confidence is exactly what our whole planet needs. Then we wouldn't need to be anybody else's territory.
That's exactly right. We'd be so busy trying to figure out the best way we can both benefit that we wouldn't be the thought about, whose is what and how am I going to take it, and would never come into our minds. We'd be too busy being like, what, it would be great if, how can I have this and you have that? We could make both our places better if we work something out, and then let's make it so it's a win-win. This is what human nature is, not what's being practiced right now. And that's that's a whole nother conversation we'll have to have about the way they hijacked Darwin's observations and turned it into this kind of justification for terrible politicking. My God,
I'd love to have that conversation. Right. You did remind me so I spent a number of years, with Jack Cornfield and Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings, and I was lucky enough to learn directly from Jack when in the days, when you could just sit straight in front of him and have a lovely, just heart to heart, and walk around the grounds, and it was just really sweet. And that power of interconnectedness, which is often what both those beautiful teachers spoke to, is exactly what we'd be just too busy finding out how we can interconnect, how we could actually both benefit. And really, it'd be so uplifting. Every single interaction you had would be a relationship of helping each other in whatever. Yeah. So I just love that. I think that's a beautiful conversation we can have.
Thank you. No, I remember if people say, well, I ask questions but I don't get any answers, but I often think that people quiet their minds and they ask a question. Maybe they ask God, maybe they ask their guardian angels, maybe they ask the universe, and then they get an answer. And then they don't believe the answer came from who they asked. They don't believe the answers, could have came from. They just think that they're talking to themselves, and that's the doubt that you're talking about. And so, and what I'm saying is, you asked a question in earnest, and you got an answer, and it didn't come from you. It literally came. Literally came into your consciousness. Not like the question you formulated and asked, but like it appeared there, and you took it. And of course, you heard it the way it was given to you, whether it was in your voice or but don't doubt the answer. You know what I'm saying? So many people, I think they doubt themselves. They take themselves right where they're supposed to be. They ask the right question, and then they get the answer, and they're like, that can't be right. I'm just talking to myself. It's just, wishful thinking, or what, you know what I mean? It's just, don't doubt.
Absolutely. Don't doubt. You actually brought to mind a wonderful CEO, a woman who's a friend of mine. And she came to me, she's often come in the past years. And she said in the beginning, so I'm here for you to get information from my spirit guides. I said, sure. Why don't you get it from your spirit guides? And she said, she said, do you know, she said, there's these beings that talk to me all the time, and I just tell them to shut up.
Oh my God.
It's exactly what I said, oh, you mean you actually genuinely don't have confidence in what you're hearing? I said, tell me what, so she started to unfold all the things she'd been told over the years. And I said, so I just picked the ones that were obviously this beautiful arc of her relationship with life. And she said, oh, I've never seen it that way. Yeah, I said, simply because you just don't believe in your own self and
right.
in your own confidence to have that, to be that channel, to have that connection with those guys. It was so funny. It was one of my very, very enjoyable moments in life with somebody who actually was really good at hearing.
Yeah.
And didn't trust even an ounce of it. So it was
unbelievable. I feel like there's a lot of people out there who do that, or have done that and don't bother anymore. But I mean, I used to do that, and I know better now, but I mean, I've certainly spent a long time, imagining that the answers that I got were, my own making or not. I didn't believe in them. But I know better now. What was I going to say? Oh, tell me about this incredible program you set up, because I'm sure people listening who have hung with us this far, are going to be interested more in how they can learn more from you, about you, and with you. And so tell everyone about this, because it sounds so amazing, man. I was really blown away by it.
It's well, lovely, very kind of you to say so. So there's a number of different programs I run. So one is with a friend of mine, Kevin Shaninger, who I developed a company called Raising Our Vibration, and that's primarily subtle energy meditation. So we go into the whole process. If you want to understand subtle energy and how to work with it in meditation, we work with you in a group setting over a whole series of processes. So there's apps and books and all that sort of thing with that. And then in terms of the Egyptian astrology, so I've run astrological, what I call astrology for awakening, for many years. And so I've had the current group of people have been with me nearly 2 years, going through a series. So we went through astrology for awakening, what I'd call the foundation course, and then astral astrology, which is using astrology to connect with, other beings, other connections, your star families, your celestial families. And then the Egyptian shamanic astrology, we actually use a traditional shamanic process, which, as one of the doctors, who's a lovely friend of mine, described as psychotherapy on steroids. I thought that was a lot, because she said, oh my God, she said, I've uncovered so much I never ever dreamed of, So it's just so lovely that the responses of people on the courses have been just absolute magic. So what I actually do is I take people through just a really basic foundational understanding astrology and the planets from the terms of the gods and goddesses. So, for example, Venus as Isis, and understanding that Venus in your chart represents unconditional love. And then I take them through the signs. So, for example, Virgo, being a Virgo, as I am, Virgo is Nekhbet, the vulture goddess, or the old crone, the wise old crone. So lots of Virgos can relate to that, being the elder high priestess, or be, because Virgos are so perfectionist, like they want to get every ritual right, every ceremony. So what we do, but each of those experiences I do within the course, and I actually take people into some of the old Egyptian rituals. So one of the simple examples is teach them an old directional, it's almost like a medicine wheel or a mandala or a labyrinth exercise, where I put people within a pyramid, and then we explore what arises in their consciousness in directionally, a little bit like a medicine wheel. So we look at some of the ancient traditional rituals, and we do them, and then we also do them in relationship to a particular aspect. So it could be in relationship to Isis or Osiris or Hathor. Cool. Or so on. So it's very cool. I mean, people have been a bit like blown out by it, because I think because in that particular course, I've really focused on the ritual, ceremony, and diving deep into what the naked mind, as I call it, or the unknowing actually brings in those out of those traditions. And because Egyptian traditions are not necessarily familiar to everybody, they are particularly revealing, because you enter into a space that is not that familiar to you. So I studied about 30 years with a friend of mine, Tarith, in alchemy and ancient Egyptian practices, and the practices particularly of Thoth, the wizard mage. So Thoth, if you're looking in your chart, is Mercury. And we were able to do many things physically in front of people, like Tarith and I would rub hands together. And this was something that happened in front of an American crowd, and oil started to drip, sacred oil, like beautiful, like frankincense or some other beautiful oil, dripped out of our palms and out of mine for about 8 hours nonstop. Wow. And again, a little bit like the graphs, I was able to go around and actually drip vials of oil that people have used for massage for years. Wow. Very carefully, because they treat it as very sacred since it came out of my hands. Did that for 8 hours. I was driving an old Volvo around Murrin County, and because that was where we were, and it dripping this oil into all my, because I had a lot of I was involved with Yogananda's work there, and Ananda and Self-Realization Fellowship. So I went around all my friends and knocked at their door with my hand wrapped towels and said, would you like some real, genuine, sacred oil? and then I'd unwrap the towels and just drip into vials. So some of them have said, I never opened it. I treat it as so sacred. It's been this sacred vial in my place. So anyway, you can feel into the magic. So all of that.
And you had some other experiences too, I know, with I think I saw something about, you guys were playing with some telekinesis. I'm sure there was some other what would they call it? Just a lot of third eye, experiments and kind of interesting things that happened to you during these classes and these training things. But that's amazing. I'm straight up, I need to learn more about astrology, like the foundational. So your foundational course is something that I would definitely look into, because I would love to learn more, but I have to learn the basics first, so I don't, it's one of the things I've been meaning to, learn more about, just because it's so prevalent in my world and this world I talk about and people I talk to. So yeah. And then let me know when the next one starts up again.
Well, the next one you might really is Tibetan astrology. So the
Okay.
next course I'm doing is actually right into the oracles, rituals of Tibetan astrology, Tibetan medical astrology, Tibet. So it's quite unique, quite,
Oh,
and
well,
it's
I
something
mean, I
I'll
might,
let you.
yeah, I might look into that one too. I mean, obviously, Egyptian has its own attraction, but I'm sure Tibetan is just as mystical,
Yeah,
and has its
yeah.
own.
They're both, they're yeah, definitely they have their different flavors,
I'm
and
sure.
they definitely attract different crowds, so to speak. So yeah, I just love that. I'll certainly
Yeah,
let
I'll
you
check it
know.
out. I'll see if I want to wait for the other one or not. But that's funny.
Love that, love that.
Now, before I let you go, let me ask you one last question. My favorite question to ask, and especially someone like you, if you could kind of, you know, I always talk about programming and how we are inevitably the products, of the programming that we got growing up, and as we become aware of that, we can begin to reprogram, our operating systems in a way that is of the most service, not only to ourselves, but to the planet, to our loved ones, to our human family and beyond. And so I'm very interested in always, filling my mind with better code than it had. And so what I want to ask you is, if you could give everyone just a couple lines of code, that we could slip into their consciousness, their operating system, that they could go to bed with and wake up and then begin to experience the world in a new way with this new perspective, what would you tell them?
Oh, wonderful. That is a great question. All right. I just say to all of you that are listening, and of course to Faust and all of this human family, if one of the most essential pieces of code that I've lived with is to consider that every experience that you have, and so obviously that we have, can be viewed as an expression of openness, emptiness, love, and clarity. So you can do this really simply, just simply by surrendering and resting right now as you listen to me, and allowing everything that happens, both in this moment, every thought, feeling, every sense, that it operates within this vast space of your own infinite potential. So your potential is vast. Your potential is infinite and boundless. And when you rest as that infinite, boundless awareness, just even for a few minutes every day, the moment you get up, you just rest back like this, getting real comfortable, and just really surrender to the infinite potential of your being. Just say, today, I'm going to rest with whatever arises because I am infinite, boundless awareness. I am the infinite, boundless cosmos flowing through me. So if you do that every single day, and even consciously check in throughout your day, if you have a moment of frustration throughout your day, just simply open your heart, rest back in your heart for a moment. Like I said, put your hand on your heart to remind you where it is and where your awareness is. Breathe into your heart, and then just affirm the same thing, the same code, that I am this vast, spacious awareness that is infinite and that actually has the infinite potential of the cosmos right in my heart right now. And so I'm simply going to allow all the experiences of my day and every moment to unfold with this open, empty, limitless, and boundless love and clarity. So something happens when we do that. We just fully rest as this opportunity to make every moment an unbound flow of empty, loving, and natural knowing. So that's it. Here's the
Something
code.
definitely happens when we do that. Absolutely. My God. Can you imagine if everyone took 2 minutes out of their day and did that? We could change the planet overnight. Overnight. It would be so
like
beautifully said. Yes, my friend, it's been amazing. I'm so glad that Nina made this referral and recommendation.
Thank you.
I met Nina on a meditation retreat, and we became friends. God bless her. Thank you, Nina, if you're listening. And Stephen, we'll talk again. We'll have to do this again because there's so much to talk about, my friend. But thank you so much for your time. I know you have to go. I'm going to let you go. But I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you so deeply. God bless everybody listening, and Nina and you and all your kids and all your families. Yep, we're really one family, right? That's right. What we're working to. Our whole planet is one family. We got to look after each other.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Stephen. You take care. Have a great day over there. Thank you, my friend.
Much love.